Hey, you all, Jason Meeks here. Today I want to share about a supernatural phenomenon that many of us experience, or some of you may have not experienced, and some of you perhaps will begin to start experience. And that's that in-between state. Okay, this is the in-between state between awake and asleep. Okay, this in-between state is a time in which we are very much prone to having supernatural experiences. Okay, and just to kind of briefly explain, like if you oftentimes, for example, oftentimes when I am falling asleep, right before I get to that full of being asleep, that in between stage when I'm completely still consciously aware of what's going on around me, still awake, but drifting off into sleep, but not yet asleep. It's kind of like a trance-like state of being. Okay, and when you use the word trance, a lot of people automatically think New Age and things like that. Let me start by saying this. We give the devil too much credit, like he creates things. The devil doesn't create things. He counterfeits what God has created. He counterfeits things that God has ordained. Okay, this trance-like state of being is mentioned in scripture. Different things, when we hear about the visions of the night, for example, in different dreams and visions of night. Okay, these are things that's ordained by God. Satan counterfeits these things, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in this video and podcast. Okay. But stop just as we just always we tend to just associate things that we don't quite understand, that's a supernatural mystery. We tend to associate that with the demonic, or with witchcraft, or with New Age. And yes, that does happen with these, in those categories. But we gotta understand that the devil counterfeits what God does. Okay, we all the way back in the book of all the way back with Moses, when he was approaching Pharaoh and whatnot. Remember, he had his staff that turned into a snake, and then the Egyptians, the magicians and stuff, they had their staff that turned to snake too. Okay, so they counterfeit. Satan always counterfeit. He copies what God does. Okay, so back to what I was saying here. Okay, that in between state, oftentimes, I'll have these vision experiences when I'm drifting into sleep, or when I'm coming out of sleep. And that goes back once again, that in between state is, we're very prone to supernatural experiences. Our spiritual senses open up in those particular states, in that in-between state. Okay, that trance-like experience where you're in between awake and asleep. We'll hear things in the supernatural that we wouldn't hear otherwise. We'll see things with our eyes, in our spiritual eyes, that we would not see things any other way. We have experiences, we have encounters. Okay, we have visions, which is basically just kind of being able to see into the eternal spiritual realm. Okay, so like I said, the devil, he does counterfeit. He copies these things, and he has a spiritual illegal way in which you can have these experiences too. But those of God, we want to completely stay away from anything that's spiritually illegal. And that, once you're spiritual illegal, is called occultism. Practicing dark arts. Those are spiritually illegal backdoor ways to have supernatural encounters. But ultimately, those backdoor encounters, first of all, it's rebelling against God. So you're not in fellowship with God. Okay, so ultimately, if you're not in fellowship with God, your eternal destination is hell, not heaven. Okay, and then also it'll open up you for supernatural demonic attack and influences all in your earthly life as well. So we don't want to do anything backdoor to have these things. Okay, so the things, when we have these experiences, and they're not backdoor entrance ways to these things. If you're not involved in the occult activities, things like that, then God, when He sees fit, He will allow us to have these experiences. There's been experiences that I have had in these in between wake and sleep, where I've seen things in the spirit. I've seen spiritual beings, good and bad. I've seen a angelic presence in this experience. I've seen demons in this experience. Like I said, typically this is when I have these visions. It's in these in between sleep and awake and sleep trance-like states. Now, there are things, even though this is completely up to God when He wants to allow us to have these things, there are different things in which we can do to kind of position ourselves for these things. One thing is fasting. Fasting is a way that can kind of help us to have these experiences. Another thing is sacrifice, self-sacrifice. Sacrificing, God honors sacrifice. Okay, and oftentimes God gives us the desires of our heart when we show a willingness to sacrifice. Okay, so if you sacrifice some type of self-ambition that you have, some type of self-interest for the sake of God, to indulge in the things of God, God sees that as you being really sincere about what you are desiring from Him, if you're desiring to have these supernatural experiences. So self-sacrifice is a way to kind of posture ourselves to have these experiences. Okay, and like I said, fasting also. And a third way is just kind of indulging ourselves in godly ordained supernatural things, like hearing godly supernatural testimonies. Like oftentimes I watch these things called NDEs, near-death experiences, in which people were legally pronounced dead, and they had experiences with the Lord in the afterlife. Deep calls upon deep. Okay, so when you expose yourself to these deep godly spiritual matters, we often have these deep godly supernatural experiences. Okay, listening to godly ordained messages about the supernatural. And notice I said godly, okay, because once again, Satan does copy, and he gives people who don't want to pursue holiness, who don't want to pursue self-sacrifice, who don't want to put the time and effort into indulging into the supernatural things in God. He creates a easier way, a backdoor entrance way, but like I said, it's not the same experience. You may experience supernatural things, but it's not the supernatural things that's ordained by God. Okay, so I just wanted to share this video explaining about that in-between stage. It's that in-between stage in which a lot of supernatural phenomena takes place. And those of you watching this, you probably had that happen where you woke up out of your sleep and you seen things before you quite woke up, or you was drifting into sleep and you heard things before you fully went to sleep. Times I've heard in the spirit, I've heard angelic voices speaking things, or telling me, plans of the enemy. It was in this in-between stage. Okay. And that's why I say too, fasting helps too, because oftentimes if we're completely full physically, from eating, large meals and stuff like that, we kind of miss out on having these experiences because we, we're so full naturally, and we just kind of drift right into sleep. Okay, and we miss the opportunity for that in-between state. Okay, so fasting does help as well too, but ultimately it's God who makes us privy to these encounters. Okay, if God wants us to have these encounters, we're going to have them. If he doesn't, we're not. Okay, so ultimately is God. But I just wanted to make this video to just kind of make you aware what happens in these in-between stages between awake and sleep. It's a lot of supernatural phenomena. God uses this time to inform us of things that basically give us the behind the scenes insight into things that are happening around us, things that may be affecting us that we have no idea, because it's happening in the spirit realm. So God makes us privy of these things by allowing us to go into these trance-like states in between sleep and awake. Okay, where we can see exactly what's going on behind the scenes in the spiritual realm. Okay, so I hope this helps you all to understand that. I will continue, as the Lord will, to share messages about supernatural experiences, and why and how we have them, and so on. Until next time, be blessed.